Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, this is something we used to do back in our radio days when we were working together at, I don't know which station, is either at the Herald or 1510 or something, where we do a segment where we talk about questions that need to be asked. And as you are wont to do, Sap, you so courteously wrote them up for me today, which I appreciate. So that's what we're going to do today. Throwback radio segment, Sap. We're going to do 6 questions that need to be asked. Typically, we would do 5, but I think we have 6 good ones. And it's our show, Sap. So we're going to do 6, starting with this.
In honor of LeBron James.
It's in honor of LeBron James. Yeah. Well, he actually fits into the first question. So, okay, we could do that. March has seen an explosion of scoring in the NBA, Sap. With, I believe it is 7. We are on the 16th day of March today recording this, and we've already had 7 50-point games this month, which is insanity. Mm-hmm. So the question that needs to be asked is, why suddenly this explosion of scoring in the NBA?
That's a great question, Jet. And I was texting my nephew, who's a huge basketball fan. He's about your age, maybe a little bit older. And we were talking about that. Like, he thinks this has been incredible the last couple of weeks. He can't remember this stretch of scoring like we've seen over the last 2+ weeks. I just think the talent level right now in the NBA is greater than it's ever been, and especially the depth of talent, especially when you look at the really young guys, the players 25 and under, and even the older guys. I mean, heck, a lot of these big scoring games have been authored by who? LeBron James and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, who's not old, but he's been in the league for a long period of time. So I just think the depth of talent is greater now than it's ever been. And partly because you just look at the European players, right? I think if you were to start power ranking the top 8 players in the world, 4 of them would be considered foreign players, whether it be Giannis, Embiid, Jokic, and Doncic. I don't think there's even argument for that, right? I mean, it could be 4 of the top 7 players in the world. I think Durant, LeBron, and pick 2 other guys, that would be your top 8, and 4 of them are foreign players. Talent is just incredible. And even like the next tier of guys that maybe aren't super duper stars, they're all capable of putting up points. I mean, the shooting is at an incredible level. We see obviously what Steph Curry can do on a nightly basis. It's really fun to watch. And a lot of these aren't necessarily coming in garbage time. I mean, they're just doing what they do, and it leads to wins. I know LeBron's had 2 of them, and the Lakers.
That's the only way they win.
Win, right? I mean, it's not like he's stat padding. No, the only way they win is when he puts up 50 points. If he doesn't put up 50, they don't win. And I know the other night Kyrie had 60
in a rout. Yeah,
in a rout, and again. The amazing thing about this, Jet, is the efficiency that these guys are doing this. Kyrie was 20 of 31 the other night. That's 65% from the floor, 9 of 12 from 3. That's 75%. I mean, that's
good for him.
You can't stand him. I know you can't stand him, but I think if you're a basketball fan, you have to appreciate his talent because it is sublime. As Mike Molyneux, our very good friend, tweeted out, like, how isn't Kyrie on the NBA's 75th anniversary team? Well, I think obviously talent-wise he belongs on there, but he's only played 601 games. He hasn't been the most durable guy. He's a little bit flaky. Talent-wise he belongs on there, but in terms of accomplishments, maybe not. But this is just ridiculous what these guys are doing, and it's, again, leading to wins by those teams, and it's also been so efficient. And it is remarkable to watch.
Well, Sap, here I'll just run it down for you again. This is just in March. We're halfway through March. Today we're officially over halfway through March. LeBron James, March 5th, 56 points against the Warriors. March 6th, so the next day, Jason Tatum on national TV, 54 points against the Nets. Kyrie Irving, March 8th, 50 points against the Hornets. LeBron James, just a few days after his big outburst, goes for 50 points against the Wizards on March 11th. Then Kevin Durant has 53 points against the Knicks on March 13th. Karl Anthony Towns on March 14th scores 60. And then the next day, Kyrie Irving scored 60. Is there a Okay, let me bring it back a little bit to the 80s, Sap, because I know that speaks to you in your time period. And I can pretend I'm from the 80s. When Larry Bird set the Celtics scoring record, Kevin McHale had set the record a few weeks prior to that, if I'm recalling correctly.
Yep.
And then Bird went out and broke it because there was a sense of one-upsmanship. Is that what's going on at all here, do you think, right now with the scoring outburst? Is that there's a sense of one-upsmanship amongst the NBA players in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about Durant and Kyrie, who play on the same team. LeBron, who's competitive with Durant and Kyrie Irving. Tatum's the young buck, who we think is going to be a top 10 player shortly if he isn't already. Karl Anthony Towns was probably the outlier a little bit, but he's having a superb year. Heck, when a 7-footer wins a 3-point contest, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and the team is playing well, which is unusual.
Really well. Yeah, I mean, they've been a surprise out there. So I think there's a little bit of that. So with that theory, Durant goes out and scores 62 over the next couple of games, right? And look, Durant's never scored 60 or more points in a game, which surprises the hell out of me because I think he's the most effortless scorer we've ever seen. Like there's games where he'll score 48 or 52 and you're like, it doesn't even seem like he's forcing it. It just kind of comes in the flow of the game and it's easy for him. If he had or has or had the same mentality of Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, what the hell would he do? Because he's way more efficient than Kobe, and he's as efficient, if not a little more efficient than Jordan. And he actually's got more tools in the toolbox as an offensive player than both of those guys. I didn't say he was a better player, but he has more ways to score than any player.
Are you surprised, Sep, that he has 8 50-point games to LeBron's 14 50-point games?
Yeah, I mean, it is weird. I mean, because we always think of Durant as the better scorer, and career-wise, they're right around 27.1, 27.2. There's only been 6 guys in the history of the sport, Jet, that have averaged 27 points per game, and 2 of those are Durant and LeBron. The other ones are Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, obviously Wilt Chamberlain, and Michael Jordan. Those are the only 6 guys. Kobe was not a guy who averaged 27. He came right out of high school. In his first 3 years, he was sub 20 points per game. And then, he grew into his role. And he also played a lot in the 90s where the scoring was down and it was a different era of basketball. And even in the early 2000s, scoring seemed to be down.
Well, and he, for the first 5-6 years of his career, he was the second option.
Right. Exactly. When they won those 3 straight titles, it was Shaq was the number 1 guy. So, yeah, you always think of Durant is the better scorer than LeBron. I think he is because he has just, again, more ways to score because Durant has that mid-range game, which Jordan and Kobe had, which LeBron struggles with that. And I'm not saying the mid-range game in terms of, he can post up from the mid-range area. The thing that LeBron can't do and has never done, and I don't think he'll ever be able to do, that Jordan and Kobe and Durant are just phenomenal at, is that drive, pull-up, mid-range jumper from say 10 to 12 feet. LeBron can't do that.
And he's carrying too much weight to be able to do that. Like too much muscle.
He can't stop.
No, he can't stop. That's like a gravity thing.
It is exactly like Karl Malone couldn't do that. And LeBron's as big as Karl Malone was. I mean, exactly as big as Karl Malone was. So he never had that go-to move that those other guys had because they're smaller. I mean, Durant's taller, but obviously much leaner. And Kobe and Jordan were ballerinas out there because they could pull that stuff off. LeBron could never do that. If he had ever developed that, he would have been even more unstoppable. But I don't think his body type would allow that. He's too big a man. Like that'd be asking Shaq to have that in his arsenal, which obviously was not possible. So, yeah, it is kind of weird that LeBron has 6 more 50-point games than Durant. Now, he's played longer. I get that. But I've always kind of looked at that and said, how doesn't Durant have like a 75-point game?
I mean, it tracks that LeBron has had that many. That doesn't surprise me. It's more surprising that Durant has had that few.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, not that that's few, 8 50+ point games is really, really good. But the LeBron thing, yeah, that doesn't surprise me because, I mean, he's one of the greatest players of all time, where just, people can.
The great.
Okay. But, that doesn't surprise me that he's had that many 50-point games. It's just surprising me that Durant hasn't, because I think if he wanted to, he could do it virtually any night.
Yeah, and again, the thing with LeBron and Durant, I think they play the game correctly. Where Jordan and Kobe had a different mentality. It was almost those guys were like, just get the hell out of the way. I'll take care of this. And they weren't necessarily worried about efficiency. Although I'll tell you, the biggest difference between Jordan and Kobe was efficiency. Kobe, look, may he rest in peace. He's, to me, the ninth greatest player ever. Love Kobe. Once I learned that he grew up in Italy and spoke fluent Italian, he had me at that point, and I got to meet him for about 10 seconds back in 2002, and he was a very gracious guy. But he was never an efficient player. He was like 44, 45% from the floor. Jordan and LeBron are like 50% from the floor, as is Durant. Those guys are more efficient than Kobe was, but Kobe didn't give a crap about that. He was just going to, do what he had to do. So that is a surprise that Durant only has 8. I mean, Jason Tatum has 4, and he's only in his
Very
5th
impressive.
year.
Very,
and,
yeah.
And we kind of think of Tatum as, this is not a knock on him, kind of a poor man's Durant. Like, of all the players in the league, isn't he kind of the closest thing to Durant? I mean, I know when he came out of Duke that Brandon Ingram was supposed to be the closest thing to Durant. Durant even said that. Durant said, Jesus, I think I'm looking at myself, maybe because of the physique. They're both really skinny.
Yeah, Tatum's put on a lot of muscle, which has helped him.
Stronger. Yeah, Tatum attacks the rim better than Durant. But, I mean, Durant's three-point shooting is mid-range. I mean, he's unstoppable. He's 6'11", 7 feet with long arm, pull up from anywhere. Again, I've said this a million times, the greatest natural scorer I've ever seen. And I've been watching basketball a long time. But, yeah, I think maybe with the one-upsmanship, Jet, we'll see Durant go out in his next couple of games and get 62. He's certainly capable of it. Wouldn't surprise us if you saw that, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's absolutely capable of it because, like you said, he's so efficient. And Kyrie, I puke while saying it, to his credit, he was incredibly efficient in his scoring, outbursts the other day too. And he could have, if he wanted to, I think he came out with like 9 minutes left in the game. He could have put up 70 plus, easy, no problem in that game. Yep. The Magic were rooting for him. The fans in Orlando were cheering for Kyrie. So, he was doing whatever he wanted out there. But Sap, let's move on to LeBron, since that segues nicely to our next question. It needs to be asked. And that is it time to shut down LeBron for the season? The Lakers are a dreadful 29-39, 25 and a half games back of first place, Sap, for those of you counting at home. Just a game and a half ahead of the Pelicans. And really now fighting to stay alive. If not for teams that were overtly tanking in the West, Sap, the Lakers would have a lot more to sweat about in terms of missing the play-in altogether. Like we said earlier, the only way they've been winning games is when LeBron James scores 50 or more. They are losing to the dregs of the league, like the Spurs and the Rockets. They played the Suns the other night, obviously without Chris Paul, and got just destroyed by them. So, Sap, you're the Lakers guy on the show. You're the LeBron guy on the show. Is it time to call it a season for LeBron?
Flip that order around. I'm the LeBron guy on the show.
Yeah, sorry. Yep.
The Lakers, so
there you go.
I have the Lakers guy. I say no. Season. They're currently the 9 seed. You want to see them get into the play-in. Maybe they're able to win 2 games and be the 8 seed. And probably at that point they get swept by Phoenix. But if Anthony Davis comes back and is healthy, which is a big if, maybe they can put a scare into Phoenix. But in terms of just LeBron, no, keep playing. He's having a marvelous year. There's a few things there that I think you look at and say, why not keep playing? First of all, he's got a real chance to win the scoring title. He, Giannis, and Embiid are all within 0.2 of a point within each other. So there's a chance he wins a scoring title, which would be his second scoring title, which, by the way, his first one was in 2007, 2008, 14 seasons ago. Imagine to win your first scoring title in 2007, 2008 when you're 22, and then to win your next one when you're 36, 14 seasons later. I think that would be pretty cool. Again, this is all legacy stuff. Also, he's about 1,500 points behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar being the all-time leading scorer. He's 74 points behind Karl Malone being the second all-time leading scorer. He'll pass Karl Malone over the next 2-3 games easily.
Yep.
He'll pass Kareem sometime next year as the all-time leading scorer, which I think is again legacy stuff. The other thing too is he has become the athlete who's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. If he continues to play, people are going to say he's stat padding. He's more concerned with records than he is with looking forward to next year. Michael Jordan, who was injured, had a broken bone in his foot in the 85-86 season, came back against doctor's orders, played the final month of the season. The Bulls snuck into the playoffs at 33-49, and then he went out and scared the hell out of the Celtics in those first 2 games. Got swept by the Celtics, won obviously 63 in game 2. And he was applauded for that because it was like, look at this guy. He's the ultimate competitor. Well, if LeBron wants to play out the string, he's going to be attacked. People are going to say he's stat padding. If he doesn't play, they'll say he's not competitive enough. Like Michael Jordan would never have done this. So he can't win. Damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. I want to see him play. I want to see him win the scoring title. Go ahead and do it. And then surpass Karl Malone and get closer to Kareem. And again, I know this is like a 1 in a 500 shot. Maybe they were able to survive the play-in, be the 8th seed, and if Anthony Davis is back and a few things click, maybe they scare Phoenix. I mean, that's a lot of ifs and maybes, which probably aren't going to come true. But yeah, he should continue to play, and why not? He's still playing at a ridiculously high level. I mean, I know people will say, well, his knee's been bothering him. I mean, the more I watch him, it doesn't seem to really impact his game. So I would keep playing.
Yeah, the reason to shut him down would purely be, medical and looking at, for next year, because he's got so much wear on him. It would be just, trying to set them up for a run next year because they don't have their own pick this year. So it doesn't, where they fall in the standings doesn't really matter. And so, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Sappy. It is definitely a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for him. And it kind of has been, throughout his career, especially as he's, approached that conversation with Michael Jordan in the public discourse. I definitely think there's certainly a degree of stat padding with him this year. I don't know how you could disagree with that. You see often at the end of games and blowouts, he's still playing and, scoring. So I think he's, clearly going for the scoring record. I don't have a problem with that. I'm just calling it like I see it. I don't, I think stat padding, I don't mind it. I really don't. But I think that is what he's doing. But the problem is, Sap, I do think he's a very competitive person. I don't think that people who knock him for being lack of competitive have any idea what they're talking about. And I can, and that's the one worry I would have, is that he's so competitive that he could potentially hurt himself, and that screws the team up for next year too. So there's like an element of saving him from himself, like, and also like against the Raptors the other night, he was trying to save the ball late in the game, and he like spiked it off of Scotty Barnes' head, and he had the incident earlier this year where him and Isaiah Stewart got into something because he, bloodied him. So like he's frustrated, and he's so big. I don't want him to hurt somebody else either by accident because he's so frustrated. Does that make sense to you?
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, he's still like the biggest guy on the court most nights. He may not be the tallest, but he's physically the strongest guy out there, the best athlete. Yeah, and I think he's certainly frustrated because it's been a weird 4 years in LA. They did win a championship, so that was the ultimate goal. But the other 3 years have been very disappointing. Not making the playoffs in his first year. Last year, having to go through the play-in and then losing in 6 games to Phoenix in round 1. And this year, having to go in on the back end of the play-in to try to get in and probably lose to Phoenix again in maybe 4 games. That's a frustrating thing for 4 years. I've said it a million times. He went to LA for business reasons as much as anything. In terms of the stat padding, he's still been at least efficient though, right? I mean, 52% from the floor, 37% from 3, which is pretty good. That's above league average. And he's actually hitting his free throws this year, 77%, which he should have been a better free throw shooter throughout his career. I tell you, if he had been a better free throw shooter throughout his career, he might already have surpassed Kareem or be that much. But yeah, I know what you mean. You don't want him to get hurt. You don't want him to get frustrated and, start hurting someone else out there, because it's got to be the most frustrating year of his career, right? I mean, because now he sees
he's never been on a team that's flat out stunk like this.
No, I mean, you know what it is, Jet? You talked about teams in the West tanking. There are nights where it looks like the Lakers are tanking, doesn't it? I mean, how often do they get down 20 points in the first quarter? Like, it seems like every game. They were playing Phoenix the other night. It was 48-22 at the end of the first quarter.
Yeah, I mean, Sap, how are the Clippers 5.5 games better than the Lakers?
Without Kawhi playing one game and Paul George playing about 10. And that speaks to Ty Lue. We both agree is one of the, 3 best coaches in the sport.
Yeah, I think he's the best coach, honestly. And that's from somebody who thought he was a bum when he was coaching, Cleveland. But no, he's a really, really good coach.
Yeah, he and Eric Spoelstra are both excellent. And I think, obviously, Pop is, let's put him to the side. He's a 73-year-old guy who's kind of stuck in his ways a little bit, kind of like Bill Belichick. I mean, we let's put those 2 legends to the side. But yeah, Ty Lue and Eric Spoelstra might be the 2 best coaches in the sport. So give him a lot of credit for that. Yeah, and look, the Clippers have won 32 out of 39 against the Lakers over the last 10 years, including 7 in a row. It's kind of scary, and it's frustrating for LeBron. This has got to be the most frustrating because, I mean, in Miami, they were right there every year. In Cleveland, when he went back, they were there every year. I mean, they went to 8 straight finals.
Yep.
His first year in LA, he got hurt and they missed the playoffs. His second year, they won the championship. Last year, they looked to me like a team that was going to repeat, but then he got hurt. Anthony Davis got hurt, and it was never quite the same. This is just like so frustrating. Anthony Davis gets hurt again, or gets hurt twice. He's
not doing LeBron or himself any favors by chirping about the Suns, got away with one last year. Cause so he says that, and then the Suns go and beat the Lakers by 30. I know Davis didn't play, but it's easy to say that stuff from the sidelines.
Yeah, just, show up and play. That's probably the best thing you can do. And then the whole Russell Westbrook thing has got to be exhausting for LeBron. I mean,
right. Sap, that leads us to the next question. If you don't mind, I'll ask the question and you can expound on the Russell Westbrook thing. So, Sap, Russell Westbrook not working in LA. We all know that. We've talked about that a lot this season.
That's the understatement of the year.
So where is he going to play next year? I have 2 teams I think he could end up on. And then I guess the Lakers would technically be a third if they can't get rid of him, which they might not be able to.
Yeah, the contract's going to be $47 million next year.
Yeah.
And you know this stuff better than I, like how contracts work, what the mechanisms are to get rid of a player. Where does the money come from? Do you have to throw in draft choices for someone to take that contract? Do you have to obviously match that contract with contracts that come back your way? The 2 teams that I've looked at, and I hope I don't agree with you on this, but if I do, then it means we're both pretty bright guys. Oklahoma City and Houston, places he's played at before. And again,
those are the 2.
Yeah, because Oklahoma City, and we didn't talk about this before the podcast. We never talk about what our takes are because that's not good radio. We learned from the master, right? Glenn Ordway, save it for the show, right? I hate when, people say, well, we're going to talk about this. And what do you think? It's like, save it for the show. It's going to be authentic. We're 2 guys sitting at the bar, just hashing out different ideas. But I'm thinking that Houston, because, it could be John Wall for Russell Westbrook, like 2 bad contracts for each other.
Yep, they just keep getting swapped for each other in perpetuity.
Happened in Washington and Houston, right? And their games are all very similar. Both athletic point guards who are now old and the athleticism is waning and they've never been efficient. And, maybe that'll work. Or Oklahoma City, because they're just so comfortable taking on bad contracts because then they can move them or they can get draft picks for it. Like with the Lakers include draft picks along with what Russell Westbrook. I mean, they don't have a lot of first round picks until later, but we know Sam Presti loves draft picks. So that's where I came up with those 2 teams. I mean, I kind of thought about the Knicks because, Russell Westbrook, as bad as he is, kind of makes you somewhat relevant. Like, I mean, but man, his play keeps going down and down and down. He's not putting up the numbers or remotely close to the numbers he used to. So again, but that's what I came up with: Houston and Oklahoma City.
Yeah, because the Wall contract is a match, so that's why Houston works. And because those players, no one's looking to build around them. Houston doesn't particularly care. They honestly, they probably do the same thing with Westbrook as they did with Wall. They probably just wouldn't play him.
How would that go with him? I mean,
not
because
well.
I mean, he's a guy. I mean, I'll give him this much: the guy doesn't miss games. He's. I mean, if you could take his intensity and durability and just put it into Anthony Davis, now you'd have a great player, right? I mean, like Anthony Davis is the least durable of all the superstars and one of the least intense players in the NBA.
Yeah,
and Russell Westbrook had that.
And this is the problem with both those teams, Houston and Oklahoma City. Neither team would play him because they don't want to because they want younger guys to get the minutes, and two, they don't want to be good yet. Mm-hmm. And not that he would make them good. Actually, he might help them tank, frankly. But I don't, both of these teams have done this last year. Oklahoma City didn't play Al Horford the second half of the season for this exact reason. And Houston hasn't played, as we talked about, John Wall all year this year. So the third option, Sap, is would be maybe the toughest pill for the Lakers to swallow, in that they would have to waive and stretch Westbrook's contract, which basically means that, so you waive the player, you're on the hook for the bulk of the contract, so $47 million, but you double the amount of years left on the deal, so that would be 2, and the cap hit is then minimized. You stretch out the cap hit, so it would be 23 and a half.
Yeah, that may be the only thing, right? Because
but then you're paying somebody to go away, which and Sap, you told me, you said this before, and I think the intricacies of the Lakers a little bit better than I do, that they're sort of run like a incompetent family business a little bit. And despite being the Lakers, they can skew on the cheaper side of things.
They do. Yeah. Yeah, no, they're a weird organization.
So is that something you think they'd be willing to do, which is pay for somebody to go away?
Well, if you're going to pay for him to go away, you stretch it out over 2 years, or if it works out with John Wall, but is John Wall going to play? Like maybe you just, again, it's like trying to catch lightning in a bottle. Ooh, John Wall still has a lot left, and he works better with LeBron and Anthony Davis than Russell Westbrook does, right? So, and look, LeBron's, I think, the best leader in the sport, so maybe he can get through to John Wall. I would think John Wall's probably more coachable than Westbrook. I mean, Westbrook's a really headstrong guy. That's why, like, it would be fascinating to see him go to Oklahoma City and Houston and they just don't play him. That'd be like having a caged tiger in your bedroom. That's not going to work. That guy wants to play, and I'll give him credit for that. He busts his ass more on offense than defense. But yeah, that's interesting. Sign a $23.5 million check for next year, and then the following year, they're not a well-run organization. They haven't been since Jerry West left. I don't even know who's in charge there, right? I mean, you got Jeannie Buss, you got Kurt Rambis, you got Linda. I would think, at this point. But then you've got Rob Pelinka, and now we hear Phil Jackson's involved somehow. I mean, there's a lot of people involved there. Yeah, and LeBron. I think LeBron knows talent, but apparently not, because he's the one who wanted Russell Westbrook rather than Buddy Hield. Or, they could have just kept the gang from last year together, and I think they'd be in much better. I mean, Kuzma's played pretty well. Oh, yeah. I mean, at least you'd have some serviceable guys, right? I mean,
this is tied both hands behind their back with this Westbrook thing.
They're like, I mean, I'm sure the Lakers are like, we hope this guy retires, but why would he retire when he's owed $47 million? Like, he'd be insane.
Here's also what could happen with Westbrook. If he goes to Oklahoma City, they would likely then waive and stretch him. They don't mind paying him to go away, probably, because I think they see him as a distressed asset that they can't rehabilitate. That he has no value. With Al Horford, they were able to recoup value for him because he did, when he played pretty well for them.
We've seen him play this year. He's damn good with the Celtics.
So, but I don't think they feel like they could do that with Westbrook. So he could potentially be free to sign with any team he wants, providing a team wants him.
Yeah, with those prices. Again, how would that work, Jed? You're much better at this than I am. But if they stretch out the contract and say, I claim him, now what's my liability?
No one would claim him. They'd stretch him. They'd waive him. He'd go through waivers. They would have to write the checks. And then he could sign with any team he wants for whatever price the team is willing to pay.
Yeah, then that's probably the best way to do it. I mean, if they'll sign him after he clears waivers, I mean, I don't even. But again, if you
because they traded him already.
They traded him, right? So it would be some other team that would get him. It's just, this is a guy that, you're better off with a guy who's really kind of just lost it rather than this guy who's kind of lost it. But he still carries himself as a great player, and he's not. Those are tough guys to deal with. It's like the guy, in baseball who still thinks he should be hitting third, who should be hitting eighth, and he's causing issues, and and the manager just bats him third to shut him up, or because
if he got waived in past waivers, Dallas, maybe they're so desperate to try to find something that works with Luka. Somebody that can take some scoring pressure off of him.
How would that duo be? I mean, you would have what that would be fat. That might.
I'm just throwing stuff against the wall.
No, I'll tell you why that would be awesome to watch, because Westbrook, I think, uses more energy than any player, and a lot of it is wasted energy. Like he's like the gerbil on the wheel, like just running around for no apparent reason. And is there a player in the NBA who uses less energy than Luka? Like Luka just kind of ambles along the court. Jokic and Luka, right? Those two guys are like, they're playing at a different speed. They're almost like your dad out there playing basketball, or like the old guys at the Y. There's no wasted movement. Like Luka's not in a rush to do anything, and neither is the Joker. I find those guys fascinating, right? There's like, do they even sweat? I mean, I was watching the game Sunday with Dallas and the Celtics, and I was just waiting for Luka to have a cigarette in his mouth. Like it wouldn't have surprised me, because he was just kind of going at his own little pace there. And then you got Westbrook, who's just like the guy that just flies around out there. He reminds me, like, I remember playing pickup basketball, and there'd always be like two soccer players out there.
Yeah.
Who fence that just, I remember one time one of the guys was picking me up full court, and I'm like, dude, I'm not that good. Like, I'm not good at all. Like, we did not pick full court. I'm not a threat here. I'm not Michael Jordan. I mean, I was a good passer. I was, a serviceable guy on the court, but please don't pick me up full court. I mean, this is a pickup game. But that would be a cool place. And we know Mark Cuban likes, sexiness, and maybe Westbrook is still sexy. I don't know. He's just played so poorly with the Lakers, and it just hasn't worked.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all going to depend on, what happens if the Lakers waive him, if the Thunder waive him. I don't think the Rockets would, because I don't think that their owner will pay for somebody to just go away, because he's hurting. The pandemic hurt the Rockets owner Tillman Fertitta's checkbook badly.
Yeah, it did.
He's got a lot of money in the restaurant business.
Yep. Yeah, he's in the service industry, and those guys did take quite a bath during the pandemic.
So I don't know, a lot to be said, but we got 3 more questions to go, and we're running out of time. So we're going to go speed round on these last 3 questions, Sap. Okay. Who will win the league MVP and who should win the league MVP? I have my answers for both. Sap, you can go ahead.
I think Joel Embiid's going to win it. It's going to come down to Embiid and Nikola Jokic, like it did last year. And I think they'll just reverse it this year, because it's an interesting story. I think Embiid wins it. He's better defensively than Jokic. I mean, Jokic is obviously a better passer. They're both elite scorers, both elite rebounders, but I think it's Embiid's time to win it. I think that's going to be the case. I still would vote for Giannis. Giannis is right there, potentially leading the league in scoring, great rebounder, great passer. Of all these guys in discussions, he's the best defender. His team won it last year, and I know that has nothing to do with this year's MVP, but now they're starting to, and I think they're going to be a tough out again. I would vote for Giannis. I think he's the best player in the league, but I think in the end, Embiid's going to win it.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing again, Sap, and we did not talk about this prior to the show. I believe Embiid is going to win it. I would vote. I think Giannis should. His team, Milwaukee has a better record than Philadelphia and Denver. His stats are very, very similar to those guys as well. He's averaging 29.7 and 11 and a half rebounds and 6 assists a game. Joel Embiid's averaging 29.9, 11 rebounds and 4.3 assists a game. Giannis is a better defender. I actually don't really see anything that Embiid does that stands out as considerably better than what Giannis does.
Nope.
So I would vote for Giannis. And Jokic, of the three of them, Jokic has the most well-rounded numbers because the assists are mind-bogglingly high, and the rebounds are also about almost 3 better than those guys, which is crazy. But I would vote for Giannis. I mean, I don't know what else you need to do to win an MVP than have a better record. By the way, this team has had a ton of injuries this year too, so he's been doing it. I know Embiid's case has been made and Jokic's case has been made by the lack of guys that they've had around them, because Embiid, until only recently, didn't have really a secondary scorer because Ben Simmons didn't play all the year and he's still not playing. And Jokic hasn't had Porter Jr. for most of the year and hasn't had Jamal Murray all year. But Giannis didn't have Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton for a long periods of time. Brook Lopez, I think, is coming back this week for the first time all year. So he hasn't had his full squad by any means either. So I think Giannis deserves it. But once you win 2 MVPs, it becomes really dicey to try to win a third because voters just don't want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the best player in that as well. And I always push back when people say Durant's the best player in the league. Durant's the best scorer in the league, in my opinion. He's a great player, obviously. I think he's the second or third best player in the league. But Giannis has played more than 100 games more than Durant over the last 3 years. That means something. No, I go with Giannis, but I do think Embiid's going to win it in a close vote over Nikola Jokic.
Okay, so the NBA voters will get it wrong. We agree on that. All right, Sap, which teams will meet in the NBA Finals and which one will win? You can call your shot right now. We'll obviously do this again later, but with just this last month of the season to go, who you got?
Okay, I'm going to probably make you ill when I tell you who I think is going to win the Eastern Conference. Although I'm so bad at picking these things, you'll probably feel better after I pick this team. I think Brooklyn's going to win the East. I think Simmons is going to come back and fit in beautifully. Durant's playing at a ridiculous level. I know Kyrie's not going to be able to play the home games, but for the most part, Brooklyn's not going to have home court advantage through any of the playoffs, so he'll get to play more games, obviously, because he can only play on the road. I think Brooklyn wins the East, and I think Golden State wins the West now that Draymond Green is back. The Golden State Warriors win 83% of their games with Draymond Green, and they win 53% of the games when Draymond Green doesn't play. That's how important he is for that team. Just look, as soon as he came back, all of a sudden, Klay Thompson and Steph Curry look like the Splash Brothers, circa 2015. He means that much, and a lot of their other players stepped up. So I'm going to go Brooklyn against Golden State, and I think Golden State will win it. It would be a fascinating finals, right? Because you'd have Durant going against his old team, and Draymond Green, I'm sure, would be chirping at Durant and Kyrie, and you got Steph against Kyrie. It'd be a pretty fascinating series, but I'm going to go Brooklyn against Golden State with the Warriors winning their fourth title.
I agree. I don't like doing that. Brooklyn, Golden State. I think Brooklyn. They're just when those two guys are out on the court, and that's not including Ben Simmons. They're still unbelievable. They're deeper than you think they are, too. And yeah, unfortunately, I think that they're going to win the East and Golden State. The only thing I think stopping Golden State is I don't like their seeding right now. They would play Denver in the first round, which I don't love.
That. We talked about that last week. They could be upset by Denver, especially if Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray come back in the next couple of weeks and be ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, they're half a game behind Memphis. I would feel a lot more comfortable picking Golden State if they were able to surpass Memphis, which Memphis is struggling a little bit down the stretch here. So I think that that's probably likely to happen. And if Golden State is then the 2 seed, they would play whoever gets in the play-in. So they'd probably play, let's say, Minnesota. I don't think they'd have any problem with Minnesota. Denver is a big difference, but Denver also only a game and a half up on Minnesota, so they could fall into the play. And so I think Golden State wants to just avoid Denver in the first round.
Yeah.
And then they'd be able to be fine and probably play a Western Conference Finals against Phoenix, which would be really interesting. But I think Golden State just has more horses than Phoenix does. And in the finals, I would pick Brooklyn, honestly. And I'm almost trying to reverse jinx it now because it's my nightmare to see Kyrie hoist because it would like validate. I feel like it would validate the anti-vax stuff, which is despicable in my opinion.
Now, if it's Brooklyn, Golden State in the finals, can he play?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I mean, look, we talked about this a few weeks ago. This whole mandate is become a little bit ridiculous in the bench, but he can't play, which I think is kind of goofy. And visiting players can play, but he can't play, which I think is kind of ridiculous. And I don't know if anything's going to change by the postseason. But you're right. When those two guys are on the court together, I can honestly say I don't know if I've ever seen two guys work so well together who were that talented and kind of make it look easy. You know what I'm saying? Like there's been other great duos in the league, even better duos in the league than Durant and Kyrie. But I don't know if I've ever seen two more natural scorers who just make the whole game look so damn easy.
I think the only team that can beat them in the East, if they both play, is Milwaukee because of the defense that they can possess.
Right. Yeah, because I could see Middleton
and Holiday is a tremendous defender, so he can at least stymie Kyrie a little bit, and then we know what Giannis is.
And they don't really have a rim protector, Brooklyn, so Giannis is going to just attack the rim. Philadelphia. I was high on Philadelphia, but now they've kind of taken a step back.
They have no depth. That's their biggest problem. They have no depth whatsoever.
Yeah. If Embiid or Harden get in any kind of foul trouble or lose gas and can't play the minutes they need to play, and that happens with those two guys because neither's really much into conditioning, then they have an obvious problem. And Miami's the team that's going to be the number one seed, but no one seems to take them seriously. Well coached, deep. They get the most out of their talent, but are they going to beat a focused Brooklyn or focused Milwaukee? Probably not.
So that's who I have right now in the finals. So we have the same finals. We just have different winners. I am trying my damnedest to reverse jinx it so the Nets do not win the championship. So that's what that's about. And then Sap, our last question with March Madness it has kicked off because you've had these play-in games, but with it to start really properly tomorrow, who is going to be the top pick in the draft?
I think it's interesting. There's three candidates, right? Jabari Smith from Auburn, who's a 6'10" power forward. Chet Holmgren, who's a 7'1" power forward / center. My favorite player, Duke power forward, Paolo Banchero. And the reason I like him is from Italy, and Paolo Banchero is an Italian citizen. So once I saw that, it was like,
oh, I didn't know he was an Italian citizen. Good for him.
Absolutely. So those appear to be the three best players. Some similarities there. They're athletic bigs, like every player in the league is at this point, right? I mean, you get 6'10" guys who can shoot threes. I would say Jabari Smith will probably be the first pick in the draft. He's shooting 40% from three, which again, that's a big thing in the NBA. And he's averaging over 5 threes per game for Auburn, played in the SEC. He's got a really well-rounded game. I'd say Jabari Smith will probably be the first pick. Again, it's going to depend who has that first pick, but you can't go wrong with any of those guys. I would go with Jabari Smith would be the first pick in the draft, but the other two young men are outstanding prospects as well.
So like you said, those are all, really good options. Another guy who could sneak up there is Jaden Ivey, the point guard from Purdue, who I think is spectacular. He's the fastest player probably in the draft class. He kind of reminds me a little bit of De'Aaron Fox, a little bit taller. But I really like him, but point guards haven't really been going at the top as often recently. It's been the bigger guys. I'm going to say whoever has the best tournament of Smith, Holmgren, and Banchero. I'm butchering, the Italian pronunciation. Banchero. If Holmgren has a good tournament and Gonzaga goes as deep as people think they should, because sometimes they flame out, I think he'll go 1 because people are just so enamored with size and being able to shoot threes. And he's every bit of 7'1". He might be taller than that. He is a string bean, though. He blocks shots really well, too. I am worried about him a little bit in the NBA because he's so skinny and because I don't see a lot of variety in his game yet, though that can be obviously coached. He stands out on the 3-point line a little bit too much for my liking, but if Gonzaga goes deep, it'll be because he plays well. And I think that will be enough to solidify him as number 1. Auburn, certainly they're a 2 seed. They could go very far. Smith could have a great tournament and they could go 1-2. And Duke, always has a chance because of the amount of talent they have. So Banchero, who was, I think, supposed to go 1 earlier in the season and dipped a little bit, he could go as well. But I'm going to say, whoever has the best tournament of those 3 guys, I think will go 1.
Yeah, we've seen that. I mean, John Morant 3 years ago had a great tournament and jumped up all the way to number 2. I don't think before the tournament he was considered the second best prospect. And it's turned out he's been the best player in the draft.
It happens. Is it the wisest thing to base your draft strategy on a 1-game elimination, tournament? Probably not. But, teams get influenced by it, just like NFL teams get influenced by if you have a really great game in a bowl game. It's the same concept.
Tom Brady's final year at Michigan had a huge Orange Bowl, and he still went 199.
Yeah, that also happened.
Yeah, and I think it went okay. It's been good ever since.
Okay. So Sap, those are our 6 questions that need to be answered. I think we answered all of them.
We did, and unfortunately, we agreed on a lot of things. But great
that
minds.
Happens. Yeah. I'd love to disagree with you more. I disagree with you plenty about LeBron and where he stands. But I think that you're dead on. You're a smart man when it comes to this stuff, and so it would make sense that we agree because we both know our basketball, and we'll see if our answers are proven correct or not, Sap. But hopefully the Nets prediction is proven incorrect because God, I would love for them to flame out in the first round, really, really badly.
Yeah, I mean, and they're going to probably come through the play-in, and again, the way it is right now, their first game in the play-in would be in Toronto without Kyrie Irving. If they lose that, then they have to play the winner of 9-10, which would be Atlanta or Charlotte. I mean, I can't see them losing to either one. But again, one of those games, a 1-game play-in, is dangerous. Someone gets in foul trouble. Someone has an awful night. The other team gets up in front and gets confident at some point. Trae Young goes and has 46. I mean, he just had that the other night. That's dangerous to try to go in from there. But look, last year at this time, we knew the Lakers were going to be in the play-in tournament, and many people were still picking them to win it, thinking that LeBron and Anthony Davis were healthy. And I do think if they remained healthy, that the Lakers may have had a run last year. They're up 2-1 against Phoenix in the first round when Davis went down. So that would have been a possibility. So it's going to be fascinating. Again, the playoffs the last few years have been more wide open, which I think is good for the league when you've got 7-8 teams that have legitimate chances to win the title.
Yeah. All right, Sap. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, as always, represented by Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out the podcast wherever podcasts are found. You can check out our social medias at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer, and you check out the YouTube version if you're not already, youtube.com/Jet Stryer. And we will be back with a new pod, I think tomorrow or Friday, one of those days. So make sure you check out for that. And we'll talk to you later, everybody. See ya.